Good morning, everybody. Hey, welcome back to Machete Adventure. So, today I thought I'd go over my last video. So I did like a little flyover of this new chicken house that I've been in the process of building. And I got some comments back on that. And so, I thought I'd go a little bit more over in depth of what this was, what I did, and how I did it, and maybe kind of some of the costs associated with it, because I know I had some questions about, how much does this stuff cost, Mike? Is it affordable? Well, it definitely can be. It just depends on what you want to do and how much you want to put into it. So it's another beautiful day here in Las Marias, Puerto Rico, and we're homesteading, and we're going to see exactly how you can do this, or how expensive it can be, how cheap it can be. So stay tuned. All right. As I said, another beautiful day here. It's fairly early in the morning, maybe around 8 a.m. It's about 75 degrees and sunny as usual. So I just love the weather on this island. In the winter time, it's a little bit drier, not quite as hot, not quite as humid. Doesn't rain quite as much versus the summertime. That rains quite a bit. Usually every afternoon we get a downpour and then it clears up and cools things off a little bit. But today I wanted to go over this chicken house. So let's take a look at what I'm talking about. So as you can see, now some of this structure was existing beforehand. A lot of the concrete was. So the concrete floor was, a lot of these walls, and as you can see, they're not great. But this was a set of hog pens. So they had walls that separated this whole floor space into sections. Each section was probably, maybe 6 feet wide. And so there was walls and there was doorways and everything for hog pens. Well, right now we're not talking about having any kind of hogs, but what we are developing is a really nice, pretty good size chicken house. So this structure is 28 feet long, and the floor plan is actually 10 feet wide. But the roof is going to be more like 12 feet wide for overhang. So when I looked at this, I looked at what was here before, and there was a roof on it, but it was in really bad shape. It was really cobbled together, and that's where we get into how expensive or how cheap can you make this. So, of course, you can be as cheap as you want. You can basically use supplies you have around. A lot of people, will toss stuff away that maybe it's not great. Maybe the wood's a little old. Maybe the metal for the roofing's, not so great. In my case, it was pretty far gone. So it had been damaged in the hurricane, and, you know, for me trying to salvage that, it would have been not very productive. So the decision was made early on to convert this over to a chicken house. And in doing so, I decided, well, if I'm going to do that and spend the money, then I should probably, you know, build it so it can withstand a hurricane. And that's where I could have gone a couple different directions. The first direction I looked at was conventional lumber. And price-wise, you know how that's been. It fluctuates up and down. And I thought, yeah, I can go conventional lumber. It'd probably be easier, to be honest, because everything kind of lines up better when it's square. You know, everything's cut. But trying to keep in the style of the island, I decided to go with posts. So these are posts that you can find here. Here's an example. So this is like a 6 inch round post. They're highly variable in size. So some of them a little bit bigger than others. You know, some are a little bit smaller. But what I decided was I'm going to use posts for the structure to hold everything up, for the roof and attach. So I ended up purchasing, let's see, 3, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. I ended up getting 10 posts total. And then, because I was tying into concrete existing structure, oh, and by the way, these are pressure treated. Everything here is pressure treated, okay? I decided that I was going to have to attach them to the cement that was in place, or the block wall. And of course, you know, it's really hard to find bolts that long. So you're not only going through the concrete, but you're also going through the post too. So what I ended up doing is I ended up going with threaded rod. So I got threaded rod, 5/8 threaded rod, and you'll see nuts and washers. So what you end up with is a hole that runs through the post, through the concrete, and tied together. So now what I did is every post has 2 threaded rods like that. So that goes through the post, ties into the concrete, and is tightened down. So every post here you see, there's threaded rod, nuts, and washers. Now the posts themselves, they're about $35 a piece. So, you know, 10 posts, $35, you're looking at $350. The hardware, it was a total of 20-something feet, if I remember right, of threaded rod. So the total on that was about $100 for nuts, washers, hardware-wise. And then all of these posts are kind of an odd length. For whatever reason, they're about 9 feet long. And I think the actual intention of them is they're actually fence posts. Okay, so they're like main corner fence posts, but they're really rough. And, they're, like I said, they're not very symmetrical. Some of them have pretty bad curves in them. So they were definitely a challenge to work with, much more so than, traditional lumber. But I did what I could do with them. There was times where I had to cut some grooves and things. I had to use a chainsaw and stuff. But I think it gives an overall effect of what I was looking for, is more of a traditional, built structure, something that, is not just cookie cutter stamped out in a factory somewhere. Now, the rest of the roofing structure is all 2x6. Now, of course, this is just a chicken house. I know some folks would say, well, why didn't you just go with 2x4s, or, maybe should have gone by 2x8s. I chose 2x6 for a couple reasons. One is I thought structurally, for me to get up there and put galvanized sheeting on it, it would be better. you know, as far as stability. And 2x8 I thought was a bit overkill because I don't plan on walking on it, you know, all the time. So 2x6 seemed to fit the bill. There's a lot of 2x6s in this. You know, there's about 24 2x6s in this. So, you know, that money can add up too. You know, again, these numbers are relative because it depends on when this video is viewed and what the price of lumber is doing at the time. But there's 24 2x6s in here. And then you have screws for all that. Again, I could have gone with some kind of bolts. I decided to go with some exterior screws. If you take a close look, you'll see they're called like a Spax type brand or something like that. But they're made for exterior application. They're all 4 inches long. And so I use them for everything. I use them for the blocking. I use them to attach, you know, everything. All the wood for the roof is all attached with that. And it's very, very sturdy. I mean, I can get up there and walk around on top of this. I wouldn't advise it, you know, because it is still dangerous. You could fall through a hole, but that's what I ended up using. And you can see, you know, it's all framed out. Every one of the posts is kind of boxed in, and I did that so that way, you know, it was wrapped around and I could have something to tie into. Now, when it came to getting this level, and when it came to getting the pitch right, that was a real challenge. This building, because it was pre-existing, was already kind of on a slope, okay? And the original roof was sloped too, a very gentle slope, maybe, I don't know, maybe, you know, a couple degrees. It's not a lot. If you take a look, you'll see it is sloped from the back down towards what I consider the front. And so I had a real challenge of how do I get these posts to the height that I want them, and how do I get the proper pitch to this roof the way I want it. Now, I could have went out and bought all kinds of equipment. I could have gone out and bought a laser and all this other stuff, but I didn't do that. Okay. There's other ways you can do it. Granted, they're much more difficult, but when you're trying to save a few dollars, you know, you can do a lot with a tape measure, some string, and a level. And I actually did construct this without a line level, which made it even more difficult, but I have since bought a line level. Basically what I did is I started with this corner post. This is my starting area, and as you can see, there's going to be a doorway here. It's not quite finished yet, but I started with this corner post. And with that corner post, I said, okay, this is my high point. This is the tallest I want this back to be. And I used that as my reference for everything. And then what I did is I measured down and I put a nail. If you can see right there, it's driven in. I don't know if you can see that right there. It's driven in, and I use that as my set point to run a level line all the way around this building, even though the building itself is not level. So each post has a nail in it. Okay, so I put nails all the way around, level line, all the way around the building, and that was my level line. Then I measured up from that level line. So I wanted the back posts at 9 feet, and then the middle posts at 8.5 feet, and then the downward or front side at 8 feet. Now, why 8 feet? Let's see. Well, when this was pre-existing, when you would walk in here, you know, I'm about 6'1", right around there, 6 foot, 6'1", somewhere in between. I didn't want to hit my head. You know, that was one of my pet peeves about what was here, is I'm having to duck. I don't want to duck. And I complicated matters a little bit by building something along the way. And we'll get to that for in a second here. I decided that I was going to put the height high enough where I could walk in here and not hit my head. And when I took out the walls, so let's back up a little bit. When I took out the walls for the hog pens that we talked about in the beginning, I had a lot of leftover rubble. Now, I could have somehow disposed of that, put it on the property somewhere, but I think, man, I don't want another eyesore. I don't want this junk laying around my ground. I got enough junk to deal with. I'm going to try to use this as fill. And I did. Now, you can see there's a lot of scrap wood here still, but that's what this is. Okay, there's a step that I built with blocks. Okay. And inside this, inside here, there is all the rubble from the walls that I took out. So basically I built the wall, I put all the rubble inside of it, and I capped it with concrete. Now, why am I going to do that? Well, hey, I thought that's a perfect spot for roosting boxes. Now, I'm not going to have a bunch of roosting boxes in here. I'm going to have maybe, you know, max maybe like 8. I mean, you don't have to have a ton of roosting boxes, but they're going to be, you know, on this side by the wall. So basically I can just open the lid from the outside, not have to come in here, open lid from the outside and access the eggs. So that was the thought behind that, and it gives the chicken somewhere to kind of jump up. They can go into the roosting box and do their thing. Now down on this side is where the roosting bars are going to be. So we're going to have roosting bars on this corner up higher than the boxes. Now that complicated matters when it came to doing the roof in a number of ways, because now not only do I want it not hit my head, but now I've got this, you know, 2-foot step that, what if I stand up there? Am I going to hit my head now? And, you know, I did a lot of measuring, and I figured out, guess what? I can do it. So you can see it's just right at the top of my hat. So I'm up on the step, and I'm not hitting my head. Now, that also made some of these posts shorter than others. So you can see this post is quite a bit shorter than this post. So all that has to be taken into consideration. And you're trying to keep that same slope. So you have a built-in slope, and then you got to find level, and then you got to reset your slope, and then you got to attach all your wood. So that gives you a rundown on basically how this main framework is built. Okay. Now we still have to put the sheeting on the roof, and we still have to put all the wire around the building. So this is going to have just a traditional galvanized roof on it. And there's going to be mesh, like mesh fabric, not just chicken wire, but something a little more stout and something a little bit more resistant to, you know, animals are getting in here, dogs, hawks, snakes, you know, all kinds of weird stuff around here. Snakes are a big concern. There are some very, very large snakes here. Most of them are not native. As a matter of fact, just the other day, I saw a red-tailed boa, a very large one, about 7 or 8 feet. And it was just crawling across the road. So the story goes on that they got loose from the zoo during Hurricane Maria, and they've been on the island ever since. So I don't know if that's true or not. I don't know if they were let loose or what happened, but they're here and they're here to stay. So, but that's a quick rundown of this building that I had questions about. You know, total costs, I would say right now, not including my time, you know, we're probably somewhere around, all in, because it was cement work, block, we're probably somewhere around $1,500. Now, some people might say, well, that's not bad. Some people might say, oh, you're crazy. That's a lot of money. You know, my neighbors said if another hurricane comes, they know they're going to come here. Because they saw how well built this was, and they're like, dude, I'm going there, you know, if a hurricane comes. So, but costs are highly variable. You know, it depends on your location. It depends on what's going on in the market. We got inflation going on and all these things. So, some of the prices when I purchased some of this stuff were pretty high. Other things were more normal. But that's kind of where we're at with it right now. You know, the next stages are going to be getting the roof, getting the wire, and putting in a door. And then once that is complete, then we'll be ready for some chickens. Now, how many chickens? Well, I don't know how many we're going to end up with, but just doing some rough math, you know, on what people say, you know, I could probably have up to about 35 chickens in here, which is quite a bit of chickens. You know, this is quite a bit of room. And they're going to be able to go out in free range too. There's a lot of property here that they can run around on. So, you know, is it necessary to get 35 chickens? No. Do I think I'm going to get 35 chickens? No. I think we'll probably start off with maybe a dozen. We'll probably end up with more over time, because I hear this, you know, a lot of people say there's chicken fever, you know, you get 5 and you end up with 20 and all this stuff. So I figured if we start off with an even dozen and we end up getting more, well, then we got room for them. So, bananas. There you go. Nice bunch too. Just about ready. They're getting there. But I thought I'd give everybody a rundown of, you know, costs associated, how the building's being constructed, and eventually what we're going to do is not just eggs, but we're also probably going to hatch out. You know, right now, everybody knows what's going on with chickens. And, you know, if you're going to try to make some kind of money off of having chickens, well, you've got to diversify. You can't just rely on eggs. You can't just rely on hatching. You have to have a multi-pronged, you know, what I want to say, approach. And you want to have a multi-pronged approach. And having a multi-pronged approach means, you know, you've got to look at it from different avenues. So that is today's video. You know, tell me in the comments section what you want to hear more about. That's what I got going on right now. I'm going to do another video here probably in a couple days, reviewing some more land clearing that we've done, and talk to you about the disaster that was. So I ran into the orneriest area of the land yet. It was really bad. I didn't get any video of that, but I'm going to show you the end result of it, and I'm going to show you what I took out of there. And, you know, all this comes with homesteading is sometimes you're taking over somebody else's problem, kind of. You know, I think we talked about before that the gentleman that owned this before was pretty old, and you'd let it go. And that comes with consequences. And unfortunately, I ran into them. So, but that's what we got going on now. So have a great day, and we'll see you next time. Make sure you like and share. And like I said, go down in that comment section and tell me, hey, Mike, what's going on with this? Let's talk more about that. Comments, questions, submit them. Thanks. Have a good one.